Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Cheryl Jansen, Global Director of Marketing at Sopheon. So strategic innovation planning and road mapping are capabilities that our software has supported and automated for quite some time. We have run a number of educational online events around best practices for these kinds of activities. In particular, I'd like to call out the three-part series that we ran last year together with road mapping gurus Irene Petrick and Russ Martinelli, entitled Breakthrough, Identify and Solve Future Problems End Users Care About. And then our most recent webinar just a couple of months back, which introduced recent research into road mapping as a strategic planning tool by Dr. Sven Schimpf of the Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering, which is one of Europe's leading institutions for applied research. This webinar also introduced a couple of examples of how leading companies that we're working with are removing uncertainty from their planning and getting more value from existing pipeline with living roadmaps. And attendees at that last webinar communicated an interest in learning practical kind of how-to tips and steps about getting started with road mapping, and that was the driver for today's session, which is called Road Mapping Works, Get Started. And with that, I'll hand you over to Paul Heller, our Chief Technology Officer, who we assume, will provide you with some practical insights on how to get started and some interesting takeaways for you. So, Paul, with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl, and good day, everyone. It's a pleasure to speak with you today. As Cheryl said, our intention is to discuss some of the things that you need to think about as you get into road mapping. Some of these will be very applicable for companies who are going to use software to help automate their road mapping, and others would be applicable no matter what technique you're using to create your road mapping. So hopefully there's something in here for everybody. So I want to begin with what is a roadmap, because I think sometimes we get confused about the definition of a roadmap. If you do a search on your favorite search engine in the internet for images of roadmaps, you see something like this. Lots of different depictions, lots of different styles. One common theme across all of these visualizations is time-based, but there are sometimes other dimensions as well that are applicable for a roadmap. So a common one would be something where I have a time frame and I have discrete points in time and I have maybe definitions or other descriptions of what that is. Oftentimes it might be a span of time, so I'm showing maybe products with a colored legend in this case, which has meaning, and graphical depictions and all sorts of other things put on top of the roadmaps as well. This is a more complex roadmap where I have linkages between items, and so I'm looking at, well, how does one particular item in the roadmap relate to another item in the roadmap? We'll talk about a lot of these as we go forward. Sometimes a roadmap is not necessarily based on timing, but it's based on characteristics. Hey, what are we doing in these areas of our business or these different types of technologies, and where's our risk? Or sometimes, and this is a very common roadmap in many organizations, it's not as much about the picture, but it's about the documentation. It's about what's behind and driving the assumptions that might be visualized. And reality is the roadmap is all of the above. It's all pieces and it's parts of every one. But one common important thing to think of is a roadmap. It's a way to express a strategy or a plan. And by definition, it's a temporary point-in-time visualization and communication tool. And so with that, it will become out of date if you don't touch it. In some organizations, it's out of date the minute it's put in place. So contrasting that with what is road mapping, road mapping is a process designed to enable better decisions and also to know when the decisions you have made are no longer valid. And so just as with roadmaps, there's no single answer on what road mapping is, but it's clearly recognized in the best practices in the industry that the road mapping process is more important than the roadmaps. It's the process that vets out the accuracy, the quality, the risk, all the factors. And we'll talk about that as we go forward as well. What you'll see on the right-hand side of this screen are just some road mapping constructs. And in this session today, we're going to talk about these and discuss where they come from, how they relate to each other, and what you need to think about across these constructs when you get started. So let's talk about the types of road mapping. In a seminar that was done last year by Trendscape, they referenced something called call to action roadmap, and I think that's a great depiction. There is a lot of road mapping that something happens either in the business, the environment, the market that causes you to make a reassessment, and that's a call to action roadmap. Another way to think of a call to action roadmap is it's ad hoc by a product owner. The product owner says, today I'm going to update my roadmap. And product owners, without a process, they know it's important that they have to keep their roadmaps current, but many struggle in doing so because it's difficult. And so every once in a while they're going to say, well, let me bring it up to date.